All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we know our preview and prediction for the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Marshall and UConn, 10-point line in favor of the Thundering Herd. Over-under set at a very low mark of 40. Monday, December 19th, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Brooks Stadium in Conway, South Carolina is the site of this one, and Marshall won the only meeting between these schools in 2015. Previewing this Marshall offense, Nick, it's not exactly spectacular, especially when you look at this passing attack. 1,465 yards for Cam Francer, 8 touchdowns, 5 picks for him, 160.1 passing yards per contest for Francer, the freshman. Not great, but when you look at this backfield, led by Kalon LeBourne, the Florida State transfer, 1,423 yards, 16 touchdowns. This guy's been running all over people all year long, 118 yards per game. Had a field day against Notre Dame, and pretty much everyone else he played, even a great defense of Troy, ran for 100 plus. There's only been 3 occasions where he's been held under 100 yards. And those games, they won 2 of them. They lost 1, which was against Coastal Carolina. The team plays in this stadium. But, this is a great opportunity for LeBourne against a pretty rubbish defense that we'll get to later. Corey Gammage, he's one of the only guys that came back from his receiving core that was really good a season ago. 724 yards, 5 touchdowns, 49 receptions, far and away the leading pass catcher there. Charles Montgomery right behind him. 34 grabs, 394 yards. They're not very deep in this offense, Nick, at receiver or at running back. Francer, the quarterback, he's the second leading rusher, 456. This is going to be the Kalon LeBourne show, much like it has been most of 2022.
Certainly expect a big day out of LeBourne. Having a great season, nearly 1,500 yards rushing, 5.1 yards per carry, and the 16 scores on the ground for him. He really is their entire offense. Love the production out of him. Francer, not a bad quarterback by any means, but just not a great quarterback. Nearly 1,500 yards passing, 56.3% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Just not great numbers for him. Does have that dual threat ability with the nearly 500 yards rushing and the score on the ground for him. I like Gammage, good target, 14.8 yards per catch, 5 scores for him. Montgomery's not a bad target either, 11.6 yards per catch plus a touchdown for him. Not a deep offense at all, but I do love what LeBourne has done. The numbers are great for him. I expect him to get a ton of touches. He's got 281 attempts on the season. I expect him to get a ton of touches against a UConn defense that really isn't that great against the run. They give up 166 yards per game. I think he'll run all over them and put up a ton of points by himself.
They do give up a lot of sacks, 102nd nationally in that category. Don't expect a lot of drop-back passes in this one, though. Looking at the UConn offense, it's a miracle this team's here. Jim Mora, great work in year 1 here. One of the Coach of the Year candidates in my book, especially when this offense, it's not been good. Less than 20 points per game, 302 yards per contest. It's not very good at all. Victor Rosa, Devontae Houston in the backfield, 12 touchdowns, 130-plus yards each. This running game's actually quite respectable, 195 yards per contest for this football team. Aaron Turner at pass catcher, 52 grabs, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think this team has some pretty impressive individual players on this offense, but for the most part, as a collective unit, it's not great, Nick. Zion Turner, quarterback, 103 yards per game through the air when they let him throw it. Not great. 9 touchdowns, 7 picks, only completing about 60%. He throws a little under 20 attempts per contest. And then you look at an offensive line that's 106 in tackles for loss allowed, going against a very feisty defensive line led by the Thundering Herd. UConn's offense, again, they have a pretty good rushing attack. That's going to be the name of the game here. But this is a pretty bad matchup, and I think they're going to have to find some big plays through the air going to Turner. 41 attempts per contest for this rushing attack, though. That's going to be the name of the game. Expect to see a pretty quick contest, I would say, in this one, because we're going to see a lot of ground and pound from both teams.
Certainly have to give Jim Mora a ton of praise. He has turned this program around. Getting bowl eligible in his first season is not something expected at UConn. 6-6 is a very impressive mark considering they beat teams like Liberty and BC. Very impressed with them, but this offense is just not great. Victor Rosa is a good back, and I like Devontae Houston as well. That's a nice balance there. Two running backs that have some serious pickup on the ground. Nathan Carter as well. He's got 400 yards on the ground and a score for him, 6.2 yards per attempt. So this is a great kind of balanced backfield. They'll have to run the ball a whole lot. Like you said, this will be a quick game. Both teams are certainly going to be ground and pounding, trying to just run the clock out as best they can. Aaron Turner's not a bad receiver at all. Yes, the average per catch is not great, 8.9, but the 462 yards is solid. 3 scores is not bad. Zion Turner, not a great quarterback, not a great season for him. He does have some yards on the ground as well, 237 yards on the ground plus a score, but this offense just kind of isn't great. They average below 20 points per game, 300 yards total of offense. Not a good offense, and I expect them to have a poor day against what is a really good Marshall run defense.
Looking at this Marshall defense is just flat out elite. 16.2 points per game, well under 300 yards per contest. 5th in FBS in run defense. They're also the same rank with 25 takeaways. This is just top to bottom phenomenal unit. Owen Porter up front, 14 TFL, 9.5 sacks. Two veteran linebackers, Eli Neal and Charlie Gray. Great production from them. 154 tackles for them, 16.5 tackle for loss. And then you look at a secondary that they're just flat out, elite. Against the run, they're phenomenal. In coverage, they're great. Stephen Gilmore, 3 picks, 7 pass breakups. His brother's a star in the NFL. Abraham, of course, he's also got, 5 picks and 8 pass breakups. Plenty of plays on the balls for him. This is just a top-to-bottom unit that really gets after it. Very hard for opponents to do anything, especially UConn is incredibly one-dimensional. Kobe Cumberlander, another 10.5 TFL for him. Incredibly deep. I think their pass rush has also been one of the nation's best. 37 sacks for them. Sam Burton's got 5 of those up front. They got plenty of rotational help on the D-line. I think their secondary, it's been phenomenal. Top to bottom, I would say, for this football team. And then, of course, Mike Abraham in the back end, like we just alluded to. A lot of plays on the ball. Him and Gilmore have been a very effective duo in the back end. What are your thoughts on this Marshall defense, Nick? A couple of years ago, they played really good defense. Last year, it was not as stout, but I think this is back to one of those units that Doc Holliday had many years ago that was just top to bottom great, had producers at every single level. This is a really crushing unit that is certainly going to love to ride the wave of Kalon LeBourne if he can get things going on the ground.
Phenomenal defense. I love this defense, top to bottom. So underrated in the national scheme. They held Notre Dame, early on in the season. I think that was a good way to kind of tell how good this defense was. 88.8 yards per game given up on the ground. Incredible number for them. Below 100. Just a ridiculous number. 16.2 points allowed per game. One of the better marks in the nation. I love this number for this team. I love this team top to bottom on defense. Eli Neal at linebacker leading the way. Fantastic season for him. 88 total tackles, 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups, interception. He can do it all. Charlie Gray as well. Solid year for him. 6 total tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. Stephen Gilmore, great season. 3 picks for him, 7 pass breakups, 39 total tackles. Sam Burton on the defensive line, 5 sacks for him, 34 total tackles. Cumberland Porter, 9.5 for Porter. Cumberlander, 6.5 for him. These guys get a ton of sacks to get after the quarterback. This defense is fantastic. I love the amount of depth and the rotation they have. These guys, a lot of these guys, even a guy like Takoy Legs, he's got 2 sacks on the season, 22 total tackles, right? He's, towards the back of the depth chart, and he is still producing on defense. I love what they can do top to bottom. He's 3rd string on my edge rushing depth chart. This defense is fantastic. They have so much variety. They can hit you in so many different ways. I think UConn's going to struggle considering how one-dimensional their offense is, and this run defense is just going to plug the holes and make a nightmare day for UConn.
I mean, you look what they've did against Georgia State, held them to 365 yards. Georgia Southern, 10 points, one of the nation's best passing attacks. App State, only 116 rushing yards. That's their MO. Troy, that was the only game this year they've allowed 400-plus yards, and that was a 16-7 loss for them. Old Dominion, 12-0. They shut them out. This is a crazy defense, Nick. They held Notre Dame, like you said, to 351 yards all the way back in week 2. But the theme of the year has stayed the same. They've just been incredibly crushing. I think a shutout here is highly likely.
It certainly is possible to shut this UConn offense out. I love the talent on this defense. They shut out Old Dominion, who's not a terrible offense by any means. Georgia Southern, 10 points. This is a great defense that really kind of stonewalls teams. If you get caught early on behind this Marshall team that can really stop you on the run, you're going to find yourself in a whole lot of trouble because you're not going to be able to catch up. This defense is going to continuously make you punt, force 3-and-outs, turnovers. I love this defense. Fantastic defense.
Look at the UConn defense. They gave up 38 points per game last year, down to 26 this year. Great changes for Jim Moore in year 1. Rather, Jackson Mitchell leads the way. Complete machine in the middle. 133 tackles, 8 TFL. Happens to always be around the ball because he has 4 fumble returns this year. Eric Watts up front, 9.5 TFL, 7 sacks. I think Yates has also been solid. 8 TFL of his own, 41 tackles. Safety Malik Dixon Williams, he's been rock solid in the back end. And 20 takeaways. That's probably been the big theme of this football team. His offense is not great. Made it to the bowl season due to being able to force turnovers. This is a defense that's certainly starting to get a little bit more out of their players. Bryce Yates, of course, he's a true freshman, so, seeing him step up is great. Brandon Boyer-Randall, 8 TFL linebacker. This is a team that certainly, it's not going to really pop out at you, but I do have some great individual players. Jackson Mitchell, of course, leading the way. I think their ability to force turnovers, like Trey Wortham, 4 interceptions. Certainly big changes going on here at UConn. They play with a lot more energy than they previously have. And, of course, this defense, despite being, pretty average unit, is the biggest reason why they are here in this bowl game in Myrtle Beach.
Giving up 12 points per game less than you did the year before is an incredible turnaround for Jim Mora. He really has worked wonders with this defense. Jackson Mitchell, star-studded linebacker, right? 133 total tackles, 4.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups plus the pick, the 5 fumble recoveries. He can do it all. Jack of all trades, love him in the middle, stuffs the run, fantastic player. Durant Jones as well, 90 total tackles for him. He's got 2 pass breakups plus a pick. Solid defensive back. I love the depth on this team. Eric Watts, 7 sacks for him, 42 total tackles. Colin McCarthy has 3 sacks. He has 26 total tackles on the season. Prince Yates, of course, young freshman, 3.5 sacks, 41 total tackles. This defense is getting better. They certainly have potential to get a lot better next year. I love the way they return these guys. These guys are getting better, more experience, fantastic defense. They're putting up good numbers. I have 5 guys that have over 80 tackles on the season. Like Dixon Williams, he's got 82 total tackles. Ivan Swanson, he's got 83 total tackles. This is a good defense that is getting better over time. The work they have done so far under Jim Mora has been fantastic, and it's only just beginning in Central Connecticut.
Look at the final thoughts and prediction on this one. I think the biggest key to the game for UConn is look to establish the ground game. It's going to be hard. Top 5 run defense is very productive, but that's going to be the only way you win this game, by controlling the clock. And, of course, forcing some turnovers will be crucial as well. For Marshall, very simple. The Colon LeBourne show and then just be great on defense. I think that's exactly what you're going to see here. I think, some games are usually more competitive in bowl season, but I think here this is going to be a complete blowout. Marshall's going to easily take care of this one. Big-time outmatchment for UConn. This is a big-time mismatch for them. 34-10, I could potentially see, a shutout as well, but I think UConn will spark a few big plays. They'll get them on the board, but it won't matter.
I agree. This has blowout potential all over it. Max confidence points for me here. I think this is an easy one to pick out the lineup. LeBourne all over the offense. I think he's going to have a great day. Defense is fantastic. I think they're going to stuff the run. I think they'll get a few garbage time points, which is why I got UConn getting 14 points, but Marshall should easily put up 40 points. I could see this being 30-0 at halftime. Absolute blowout territory. Interesting matchup. This game is isolated. It's on its own day, Monday, only game on the day, on the slate early, mid-afternoon Monday matchup. I don't know how many people are going to watch it. I'm going to tune in because I think it's interesting to see what direction these two teams are going, and I do want to watch this Marshall defense. But there is some potential here. Maybe something happens, but I think UConn just is outmatched here. I think Marshall blows them away. But there's no disrespect to UConn. They've had a fantastic season. 6-6 first year to Jim Mora and bowl eligible is more than you could have ever asked for if you're a UConn fan. So I think they get all the respect in the world from me, and I certainly think you feel the same way.
Also beat a team in the FBS in Boston College. Very impressive. They fought hard in the win over Liberty. It's going to be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been it's an interesting matchup. I like these two defenses. Want to see how they do.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.